Emma Carlson stepped off the sleek black SUV and into the muted glow of the art gallery VIP reception at JFK. The entryway was lined with towering canvases, abstract swaths of crimson and gold, and soft spotlights that made every brushstroke glow. A string quartet played a slow, lilting melody in the corner, and the subtle scent of white lilies hung in the air. Everything about this lounge had been designed to feel exclusive, to whisper rather than shout. Velvet armchairs in eggshell white, low coffee tables holding polished champagne flutes, and a small service bar stocked with artisanal hors d'oeuvres. At 14, Emma knew she belonged here. Her father, Harrison Carlson, was the chairman of Meridian Charter, and the gallery's founder had personally reached out to extend this private preview before her flight. She paused at the threshold, sliding the strap of her leather tote over one shoulder. A single breath filled her lungs with confidence, because she wasn't just any teenager. She was, in her own mind, the perfect combination of poised and curious. She had spent the few hours between school and this moment studying the exhibit catalog on her iPad. Sculptures inspired by early 20th century Paris, paintings from an emerging Bay Area artist, and one haunting piece called Silent Witness that featured a lone figure painted in shadow. A hostess in a cream-colored blazer greeted her by name. "Miss Carlson," she said, guiding Emma toward a high-backed chair by a floor-to-ceiling window. Beyond the glass, a line of private jets gleamed under runway lights, their polished fuselages promising a journey that most could only dream of. "Can I get you anything before boarding?" the hostess asked, offering a flute of sparkling rosé. Emma shook her head, smiling politely. She wasn't one for alcohol. She much preferred the quiet hush of this space, the feeling that she, and only she, understood what it was to slip into a world built on art, taste, and unspoken privilege. She sat, crossing her legs at the ankle. A well-dressed couple swept past, murmuring in French about their upcoming trip to Cannes. An older woman in a tailored suit leafed through a portfolio of modern sculpture designs. Nobody paid much attention to Emma herself, which suited her just fine. She'd learned long ago not to crave the spotlight. True authority, she believed, was silent and self-contained. Minutes later, a muted chime echoed through the lounge. Emma checked her boarding pass. Charter flight MC-109, Meridian Charter, seat 1A. Her pulse quickened. 1A was the epitome of first-class exclusivity on this type of flight. She slipped the pass into her tote, stood, and made her way toward the discreet boarding gate at the far end of the room. As she passed the exhibit's title wall, Reflections in Flight, Art of Movement and Memory, she allowed herself one last glance at Silent Witness. The lone figure painted in shades of ink seemed to watch her leave, as if acknowledging her place in a story that was just beginning. The jet bridge was hushed, lit by recessed floor lights that guided her forward. A uniformed attendant checked her pass, then nodded and stepped aside. "Enjoy your flight, Miss Carlson," she said, her voice calm and practiced. Emma smiled in return and slipped into the cabin, which felt more like a private salon than an airplane. Polished wood paneling lined the walls, and overhead, recessed mood lights cast a warm glow over 12 spacious leather seats arranged in pairs. The fabric curtains between rows promised privacy. A small brass plaque beside seat 1A glinted, "Smart Seat VIP." Emma settled into her seat, her heart fluttering with anticipation. She slipped her tote onto the polished table in front of her and unzipped her backpack, pulling out a slim volume of poetry, her favorite way to pass the time. As she opened it to a familiar page, she caught a glimpse of the passenger across the aisle. An older gentleman in a tailored navy suit, adjusting the cufflinks on his crisp white shirt. He glanced at her briefly, offered a polite nod, then turned back to his device. The cabin was quiet, almost reverent, as if everyone knew the rules here. Speak softly, move gracefully, and never challenge the unspoken order. But Emma's instincts, honed by years of watching her father navigate boardroom politics, told her that beneath this calm surface, power was pulsing. She closed her poetry book and leaned back, feeling the seat's memory foam cradle her gently. The smart seat console displayed ambient lighting options, noise-canceling settings, and, most importantly, an icon showing Emergency Alert enabled. She tapped it once to check, then smiled to herself. It was comforting to know that this seat, a product of Meridian's own R&D division, could automatically signal for help if anything went wrong. Just then, the cabin door closed with a soft thud, and the engines whirred to life. A flight attendant's voice, smooth and confident, echoed through the overhead speakers. "Welcome aboard Meridian Charter Flight MC-109. We are readying for departure." Emma felt a thrill of excitement as the wheels began to taxi. Outside, the runway lights shimmered, and for a moment, she imagined herself gliding above the clouds, a silent observer in a world that spanned continents. Still, as the plane inched forward, she couldn't shake a small flicker of unease. In this world of curated elegance and unquestioned privilege, what would happen if someone challenged the order? Emma's mind returned to the painting she'd just left behind. The lone figure in shadow, a silent witness to forces beyond its control. She closed her eyes and let the engine's steady hum wash over her. She had her boarding pass, her poetry, and a seat that could call for help at the push of a button. She was ready. In the hush before takeoff, Emma Carlson sat in Smart Seat 1A and allowed herself one last private moment. Beneath the surface of quiet luxury, something was stirring. An undercurrent that promised this flight would be more than just a routine journey. And in the stillness, she felt the first inkling of what it meant to navigate a world where art, innovation, and silent power collided. As the plane gained speed for takeoff, Emma opened her eyes and let the rush of acceleration carry her into the unknown. The story was just beginning. Emma Carlson felt a soft click as the cabin door closed behind her, sealing her into the hushed sanctuary of Meridian Charter Flight MC-109. The hush was almost reverent, broken only by the distant hum of the auxiliary power unit and the muted thrum of ventilation. Directly ahead of her, the cabin stretched in two columns of 6 leather-clad seats, each pair separated by a slender aisle and shielded by lightweight linen curtains. The effect was less airplane and more private gallery, an enclave fashioned for an audience that valued discretion over spectacle. She paused for a moment in the aisle outside seat 1A, letting the warm glow of the overhead mood lights wash over her. The lights shifted from a gentle amber to a calmer blue as the door latched, an automatic welcome ritual for every Smart Seat passenger. Emma tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and reached for the small brass plaque affixed to the wood-paneled wall beside her. Smart Seat VIP 1A. Her fingertip brushed the engraved lettering, a tangible reminder that this seat was more than just a place to sit. It was a promise of safety and sophistication. Sliding into the smooth leather cushions, Emma crossed one leg over the other, positioning her tote bag on the fold-down table. It felt sturdier than any ordinary tray table she'd seen on a commercial flight, solid cherry wood, polished to a soft sheen. She unzipped her backpack and removed a slim notebook, its cover embossed with her initials. She glanced around the cabin, noticing the precise alignment of headrests, the slight shimmer of polished metal on the seatbelt buckles, the way each curtain hung free of wrinkles. It was a world calibrated to perfection, every detail designed to reinforce the unspoken creed of first-class travel. Here you belong. Across the aisle, an elegantly dressed man in his early 60s adjusted the collar of his bespoke navy blazer. His hair was silvery white, cut in a conservative style that spoke of boardroom meetings rather than beach resorts. He caught her eye for a beat, offered a polite nod, and returned to scrolling through a tablet. Emma gave a small smile and returned her attention to the Smart Seat control panel embedded in the armrest. On-screen icons displayed ambient light settings, massage options, and, most importantly, the emergency alert feature. She tapped the emergency icon once, just to verify that it was active. A soft chime confirmed that the smart seat's sensors would automatically detect any sudden impact or elevated decibel level, instantly alerting Meridian's operations center. She leaned back and exhaled, allowing herself to appreciate the moment. In a cabin this intimate, just 12 seats, every passenger was a VIP. Yet everyone also had a measure of accountability. The discrete cameras and pressure sensors in each headrest didn't feel intrusive. Rather, they promised accountability in a space where assumptions could spiral into injustice. Emma's father had often told her that true power lay in silent oversight, watching but not shouting. Here, technology provided exactly that, a watchful eye that never blinked. A flight attendant appeared at the front of the cabin, her uniform crisp and neatly pressed. She carried a small leather-bound notebook and offered a warm smile. "Good evening, Miss Carlson. Welcome aboard," she said, her voice calm but welcoming. Emma recognized her as Avery Brooks, the junior flight attendant who had served on Meridian's inaugural charter last year. Avery's presence felt reassuring, a reminder that even in a world of innovation, it was human warmth that anchored everything. "Thank you," Emma replied, letting her words settle into the hushed space. "Are we still on schedule for takeoff?" Her tone was curious rather than anxious. She trusted the system, trusted her seat, and even trusted Avery's competence. "We're right on time. Engines will start in about 10 minutes, Avery said as she moved down the aisle, checking seatbelts and straightening headrests. As Avery reached the rear curtain, Emma caught her eye again. Avery offered an encouraging nod before continuing her rounds. Emma watched her go, then let her gaze drift upward. The overhead bin was one of the slimmest she'd ever seen, designed for strict carry-on allowances, not bulky suitcases. She noticed a whisper of fabric lining the edge, the stitching so precise it might have come off a couture gown. It was as if every inch of this space had been curated by someone with an unerring eye for both form and function. She reached into her notebook and began to sketch the cabin layout, an exercise she sometimes did to calm her nerves. With each graceful arc of her pen, she mapped out the aisle, the position of the curtains, the spacing between seats. The act of drawing grounded her, reminded her that she was here by choice, on the cusp of an experience that few her age ever had the chance to enjoy. At her side, the smart seat leather massage function hummed to life, kneading the tension out of her shoulders. She closed her eyes, letting the gentle rhythmic vibrations soothe any lingering apprehension. The sensation was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably luxurious. She thought of the hum of the engine soon to follow, and felt a thrill. This was her world now, one of silent status and subtle authority. A soft ding echoed through the cabin as her phone registered a confirmation. Boarding complete. She opened her eyes to see every curtain drawn back, every traveler seated and secured. The uniformed crew in the galley moved with choreographed precision, adjusting the galley lights and running final checks. Emma's pulse quickened with anticipation. Soon, they would push back from the gate and taxi out to the runway. She closed her notebook and tucked it away, then settled back into the plush cushions. She lifted her chin slightly, felt a hint of the powerful buzz of the city left behind as they prepared to depart for Paris. In the gentle hush of the cabin, she allowed herself a private smile. Here, on Smart Seat 1A, she was both observer and participant, the protagonist in a story of innovation, elegance, and unspoken power. The engines rumbled softly as the plane began to roll, the city lights of New York shimmering beneath them. Emma pressed her hand once more to the Smart Seat plaque. She was ready for whatever came next, to glide through the night sky, to witness how the story would unfold when luxury and justice converged in mid-air. And as the city lights faded, Emma Carlson embraced the quiet promise of her journey, confident that in a world of silent observation, she would be seen, and, more importantly, heard. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft lavender as Meridian Charter Flight MC-109 settled into a smooth cruise altitude. Emma Carlson, still settling into the gentle hum of the engines and the memory foam embrace of her smart seat, lifted her gaze from the poetry volume in her lap. Across the aisle, the overhead mood light shifted, casting the cabin in a tranquil glow. That quiet peace, however, was about to be disrupted. Vanessa Ricci appeared at the head of the aisle as gracefully as a conductor stepping onto a stage. Her uniform was immaculate: crisp white blouse, navy pencil skirt, and a name badge gleaming under the lights. She paused in the center of the cabin, surveying her domain with a practiced look. Emma had seen that look before, one of careful judgment, as though Vanessa possessed a sixth sense for who belonged where. Tonight, that look seemed sharper, colder. "Miss Carlson," Vanessa began, her voice low but carrying through the hushed cabin. Emma's heart thumped in her chest. She set her poetry book aside and straightened, palms resting lightly on the armrests. "Yes?" she answered quietly. Vanessa stepped closer, her heels clicking softly against the polished cabin floor. She stopped just at the edge of Emma's seat, eyes narrowing slightly. "Are you certain you're in the right seat?" The question hung in the air. On the surface, protocol. It sounded innocuous enough. But Emma detected the undercurrent. A challenge, a silent accusation that she hadn't earned her place here. Emma smiled politely, though her stomach twisted. "I'm positive. Seat 1A, she said, lifting her boarding pass from her lap and turning it toward Vanessa with both hands. The badge glinted. Smart Seat VIP, 1A. Vanessa took the pass and scanned it slowly, her eyes flicking first to Emma's face, then back to the pass, as if the two didn't quite align. "Smart Seat VIP, she echoed, almost to herself. She let out a soft sigh. "I just want to verify. Sometimes passengers get mixed up during boarding." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Emma felt her cheeks warm. She'd seen the polite attention of business magnates and Hollywood types before, but never as scrutiny. "I purchased this seat at full fare," Emma replied, keeping her tone steady. "Charter flight MC-109, seat 1A. Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line. She folded the pass with meticulous care, slipping it into her pocket as if it were evidence. Then, without another word, she leaned in slightly. Emma caught a faint scent of jasmine and hairspray. Vanessa's eyes, ice blue and precise, examined Emma's expression. In that moment, flying felt less like freedom and more like performance. Emma's breath caught, her hands flexed on the armrests. Yet she didn't wilt. She refused to give Vanessa the satisfaction of seeing her uneasy. Vanessa straightened and tapped the seam of Emma's seat with one gloved fingertip. "I'm going to need you to stand so I can have a closer look at your dress code and accompanying credentials." The formality of her phrasing only deepened Emma's discomfort. Emma began, but Vanessa cut her off. "Please, Miss Carlson, it'll only take a moment." A hush fell over the cabin. Emma looked down the aisle. Passengers pretended to be engrossed in their devices, but Emma felt their collective gaze. She rose slowly, smoothing the pleats of her skirt as she moved. Each step felt heavier than the last. Standing in front of her seat, Emma fought the urge to cross her arms defensively. Instead, she stood tall. "Is there an issue with my attire?" she asked, voice firm. Vanessa's expression flickered, surprise, perhaps, that Emma dared to ask. Then she masked it with a controlled smile. "No, of course not. It's just, I need to ensure all guests meet Meridian's charter dress and identification standards. Thank you for your cooperation." She clicked her heels and stepped back, as though dismissing an errant employee rather than a paying VIP passenger. Emma steadied herself, letting out a silent breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She stepped back into 1A, but Vanessa remained standing, studying her as though she belonged somewhere else entirely. The mood lighting shifted again, casting long shadows down the aisle. Emma could almost see the invisible line Vanessa had drawn. Inside it, those who belonged. Outside it, those who did not. Her palms itched. She wanted to reach out, to cover that line, to erase it. But none of this would have happened had she not been so calm. Emma sank into her seat, forcing her back straight against the headrest. She closed her notebook, leaving it on the cherry wood table. Her mind raced. Why me? What did I do wrong? Vanessa finally broke the silence. Thank you, she said, as if Emma's compliance had been some grand favor. She slipped down the aisle without another glance, checking seatbelts and straightening curtains as she went. Once Vanessa disappeared behind the galley curtain, Emma let herself slump slightly. She slid a hand across the cool surface of her smart seat plaque. The emergency alert icon blinked quietly, ready, watching. It felt reassuring, like a silent friend. But in that moment, Emma's world had tilted. A place that once felt secure, a space reserved for those who belonged, now felt foreign. She remembered the painting Silent Witness from the gallery lounge. The lone figure observing, unassuming and yet powerful in its stillness. Emma realized that being silent didn't mean being weak. It meant surviving long enough to choose precisely how and when to wield your power. Her pulse steadied. She closed her eyes and imagined the sensor in her seat, tiny, unblinking, recording every movement, every word. If only justice could be as unbiased as technology. The cabin lights shifted again to a gentle blue, and the engine's hum deepened. Through the curtain, Emma heard the low murmur of the cockpit, sounds she couldn't quite place, but knew meant they were approaching the runway. She took a deep breath, listening to the soft click of seatbelt signs and the faint scrape of wheels on the tarmac. Emma set her jaw, determination flickering in her chest. She would not let this moment define her. She belonged here just as much as anyone else. Of that, she was certain. And so, as Flight MC-109 prepared to depart for Paris, Emma Carlson waited. She rose above the sting of Vanessa's doubt, ready to remain calm, ready to be the silent witness with a will of steel. The story of this flight was only beginning, and Emma intended to see it through on her own terms. Emma Carlson's fingers trembled just slightly as she sank back into the plush embrace of her Smart Seat 1A. The cabin lights had returned to that gentle blue hue, casting everything in a serene glow, an ironic counterpoint to the storm brewing in her chest. She pressed her palms flat against the polished cherry wood armrests, willing herself to inhale slowly, to steady her breath. Across the aisle, the older gentleman still sat upright in his tailored blazer, oblivious to the tension crackling between Emma and Vanessa Ricci. Emma knew what she had to do. She unclipped her seatbelt with deliberate slowness, every small click echoing loudly in her ears. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her phone, its screen illuminating her face in a soft rectangle of light. Her thumb hovered over the messaging app. For a moment, she hesitated. This was the quiet before action, when your heart warned you of the risk you were about to take. But Emma had grown up watching her father navigate corporate minefields with nothing more than a steadied voice and precise words. If she wanted justice, she would have to initiate it herself. She tapped a quick text to her mother. "Mom, I need you. They're making me move to 12B. A tiny blinking cursor confirmed her message had been sent. Then came the weighty seconds of silence. Emma felt as though the entire cabin was holding its breath with her. The flight attendants made their routine rounds, smiling and checking seatbelts along the aisle, but none met her eye. The older man across from her shifted in his seat, glanced at his watch, unaware of the collision of proper protocol and personal prejudice that had just taken place. Emma stood, offering Vanessa her most composed expression. Her heart thrummed like the engines beneath them, but externally, she was as still as a marble statue. Vanessa's icy blue gaze flicked down to Emma's phone in her hand, then up to her face. A faint crease formed between Vanessa's brows. "Miss Carlson," Vanessa said, voice as smooth as satin yet tinged with steel. "May I have your phone?" Without waiting for a real reason, Vanessa reached out and snatched the phone from Emma's fingers. Her grip was firm, almost casual, as though she were retrieving a child's errant toy rather than a device carrying urgent proof of wrongdoing. The screen went dark in Emma's stunned hands. Gasps rippled through the cabin as pens and tablets clattered. The older gentleman looked up, alarm knitting his brows. An elderly woman across the aisle peered over her glasses. Emma's cheeks flamed with embarrassment and anger, two emotions vying for dominance. She swallowed hard, fighting the urge to speak up, to demand her phone back. But she remembered the painting Silent Witness, the lone figure standing in shadows, witnessing events without flinching. Emma would not shout. She would endure, then act. Vanessa examined the blank screen as if it were a sealed envelope she was determined to break. "I told you," she said softly, leaning close. "I must verify that passengers traveling alone meet dress code and seating standards. If you're causing a disruption, I'll have to escort you to the back now." With that, she slapped Emma's hand, knocking the phone from her grip and sending it clattering across the aisle floor. The sound of plastic hitting metal was jarring, almost louder than the engines. Emma bit her lip, tasting the faint tang of copper in her mouth. She watched Vanessa's gloved hand flex as the phone skidded to a stop near the gentleman's foot. He looked down, shrugged apologetically, then passed the phone back to Emma without a word. No murmured objection, no flash of defiance. Just another passenger reclaiming his personal property, then averting his eyes. Emma sat back down, trying to steady her breathing. She picked up the phone, breathless, and wiped it on her skirt before unlocking it. The text to her mother had already been read. 2 blue ticks confirmed it, and a reply was waiting on it. "Give me a minute." In that moment, Emma realized how powerless a single teen could feel in a space built for the privileged. But she also recognized something else, that her calm would be her greatest weapon. She tapped out another message. "Smart seat triggered. They'll see this. Stay ready." Then she tucked her phone into the pocket of her tote. She refused to look at Vanessa again. She didn't want that mix of pity and superiority reflected back at her. Instead, she returned her gaze to the smart seat console, watching the little emergency alert icon pulse gently, an unblinking sentinel. Across the aisle, the older gentleman offered her a small nod, his eyes conveying an unspoken apology. Emma returned the gesture with a brief, grateful smile. She tapped her fingertips lightly against the armrest, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath her skin as the seat's massage function hummed to life. It was a reminder that this seat was more than a comfortable haven. It was a guardian with a voice that could not be silenced. Vanessa, meanwhile, drifted back to the front of the cabin, her posture rigid. She consulted her notebook as if making notes on Emma's behavior. Emma's jaw clenched. The injustice of it all made her blood burn, yet she maintained her composure. Her internal monologue quieted into a single truth. Survival required silence and strategy. As the cabin lights shifted to an even deeper blue, signifying they were moments away from reaching cruising altitude, Emma slipped her backpack aside and retrieved her poetry book once more. She opened to a well-worn page of haiku that her father had gifted her. A feather drifts down. Still water reflects the sky. Silence holds its truth. She read the lines with eyes half closed, letting each syllable anchor her. The chaos of Vanessa's contempt receded, replaced by the stillness of verse. She drew in a steadying breath, closing the book and placing it in her lap. Her heart rate slowed, and her thoughts aligned with her purpose. Behind the curtain, the flight attendants murmured among themselves, preparing for service. A whisper of concern floated forward. Someone had mentioned the front of the cabin was on hold. Emma listened, her senses alert. If the flight crew hesitated to close the door, it meant the operations center had received her alert. A soft chime from her phone announced another message. Emma glanced down. Lockdown in effect. Wait for instructions. Love you. Her lips curved into a small, triumphant smile. The world beyond this cabin was aligning with her truth. She bent down and retrieved her phone from the gentleman's hand again. This time he handed it over without hesitation, eyes steady, supportive. Emma tucked the phone away for good and sat forward, settling into the rhythm of the flight. She felt the seat shift beneath her as the autopilot engaged. A gentle vibration rolled through the fuselage, a reassurance from the aircraft itself that the journey would continue, but not without consequence for Vanessa's actions. Emma Carlson leaned back, masking the pulse of her exhilaration behind a calm facade. She had played her part perfectly, the silent witness, poised and collected. Now she would watch as technology spoke on her behalf, just as her father had taught her. And in that quiet victory, she found the first glimmers of power. The cabin lights dimmed further, the midnight sky glinting through the oval windows. Emma pressed her hands together and rested them in her lap. She felt no need for applause. Her phone's emergency alert and the hush of acceptance from her fellow passengers were all the vindication she required. In the stillness of Flight MC-109, Emma Carlson discovered that sometimes the quietest voice carried the loudest truth. The gentle hum of the engines had settled into a steady drone when Emma Carlson felt it. A subtle shift under her thigh, like the faint heartbeat of the seat itself. She had learned to trust that sensation. It meant the smart seat sensors were active and vigilant. Moments ago, when Vanessa Ricci had struck her hand and knocked her phone away, Emma had triggered the emergency alert with a single thought. Now, beneath the polished leather of seat 1A, the seat was gathering every vibration, every decibel of raised voice, every sense of disturbance. Emma's heart began to thrum, but she kept her face as composed as marble. Above her, the cabin lights shifted briefly to violet before settling back into their calming blue. She slid her hand to the small brass plaque beside her armrest, Smart Seat VIP, and pressed lightly on the discreet emergency button built into the frame. The soft click was nearly silent, but within the heart of Meridian Charter's operations center, red lights were already flashing. Across the aisle, the older gentleman in the navy blazer caught her eye again and offered a slight, conspiratorial nod. Emma returned it, her pulse quickening. Vanessa Ricci had walked away, believing she'd pressed Emma into submission. But Emma knew better. The seat itself would speak on her behalf. Through the intercom speakers hidden in the overhead bins, a calm female voice interrupted the routine safety broadcast. Attention Meridian Charter Flight MC-109. This is an urgent message from operations. Cabin lockdown protocol is now in effect. Do not close the flight deck door. All crew to hold position. Passengers, please remain seated. A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. Emma felt a surge of relief. This was exactly what she'd hoped for. A lockdown meant no one could dismiss what had just happened. No more pretending. Technology had stepped in where human bias had failed. Vanessa halted mid-stride in the galley doorway, her clipboard slipping slightly. She glanced toward the cockpit, and the flight attendants exchanged startled looks. The cabin lights blinked once, amber this time, signaling that the plane would not depart until the situation was resolved. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She pressed her palms together in her lap, closing her eyes for a moment to steady herself. She thought of her mother, Suzanne Carlson, back at Meridian headquarters, who had received Emma's text and immediately relayed the incident to Harrison. Carlson, Emma's father and the charter's chairman. Within 30 seconds, Harrison had approved the lockdown and notified COO Michelle Grant, who was now activating the emergency protocol. Through the curtain, Emma heard the soft click of the cockpit door opening, then the low murmur of Captain Reynolds' voice. The door remained open only briefly before the curtain closed, sealing Vanessa and the crew in a standoff with the ground operations. Emma dared to peek around the linen divider. She saw Vanessa standing uncertainly by the galley bulkhead, her posture rigid. Two junior flight attendants flanked her, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. In the dim cabin light, Vanessa's face looked smaller, as if the seat of power she'd claimed so confidently were suddenly slipping away. Overhead, the emergency alert icon on Emma's console pulsed, a silent heartbeat in the hush. She let the moment stretch. There would be no dramatic announcements, no raised voices. That was the beauty of this protocol. It spoke in the language of authority rather than emotion. The entire flight was stalled, grounded until a resolution. Passengers stirred, leaning forward in their seats. The older gentleman reached into his jacket pocket and clicked on his tablet. A muted beep came from across the aisle. Someone was live streaming, no doubt capturing the lockdown announcement. Emma felt a thrill. The world beyond this cabin would soon see exactly what had happened. Vanessa cleared her throat, her voice betrayed by a quiver as she tapped her microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. I'm working with operations to resolve this." She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll depart as soon as possible." Emma folded her hands in her lap, nodding to the passengers around her. A middle-aged woman in a silk scarf touched Emma's shoulder. "I'm sorry, dear," she whispered. Emma offered a small smile. "Thank you for caring," she said. The cabin lights flickered again, this time to green. A signal from the ground that someone had engaged directly with the emergency alert. Emma inhaled, letting the crisp scent of linen and polished metal fill her senses. She was watching a power play unlike any she'd ever seen. Technology had delivered the call, but it was the swift action of her parents and the COO that amplified it. Behind the curtain, the muffled voice of COO Michelle Grant came through a speaker planted near the cabin door. "Vanessa Ritchie, this is Michelle Grant at Meridian Operations. I've reviewed the live feed. You will make a public apology to Miss Carlson and return her to seat 1A immediately. Failure to comply will result in immediate suspension." Vanessa's shoulders slumped, and to Emma's surprise, tears glistened at the corners of her eyes. The woman who'd strutted down the aisle with such authority was now visibly undone. Vanessa squared her shoulders and strode back into the cabin. The passengers fell silent, shifting their attention from the window to the aisle. Emma felt her pulse steady. She stayed seated, her posture regal. Vanessa stopped in front of 1A, her gloved hands clasped before her. The cabin was so quiet, Emma could hear each breath. Then, with a voice that quavered but was loud enough for all to hear, Vanessa began. "Miss Carlson, on behalf of Meridian Charter, I sincerely apologize for my actions. I should not have questioned your presence or struck you. Please accept my deepest regret." Emma watched Vanessa's eyes, no longer cold, but filled with contrition. She nodded once, her expression composed. Vanessa stepped aside, gesturing toward 1A. Emma rose with slow grace, smoothing her skirt. She could feel the weight of 100 eyes following her. As Emma seated herself again, the cabin lights returned to their standard hue. The message was clear. Injustice had been noticed, call had been answered, and order restored, not by loud protest, but by silent, structured authority. The older gentleman raised a glass of water in a quiet toast. Emma offered him a grateful smile. Behind her, Vanessa closed her eyes briefly, drawing strength from the moment of accountability. Up front, the cockpit curtain fluttered, and Captain Reynolds's voice announced, "Cabin lockdown lifted. We're cleared for takeoff. Thank you for your patience." The engines hummed anew, as though welcoming passengers to the skies once more. Emma leaned back, allowing herself a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. In her lap lay her poetry book, its worn pages a reminder that sometimes words, soft as they might be, were backed by technology and family power strong enough to shift an entire flight. As the plane began to taxi, Emma pressed her fingertips to the brass Smart Seat plaque. This seat had listened. It had acted. And it had ensured that no one, not even a confident flight attendant, could dismiss her. In that moment of motion, Emma Carlson felt a surge of something new, hope. Knowing that in a world built on appearance and protocol, there existed systems, both technological and human, that could champion fairness. And as the city lights of New York twinkled beneath them, Emma allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. The journey toward Paris had resumed, but Emma already knew it would be a flight she, and everyone on board, would never forget. The cabin fell into an eerie hush as the overhead speakers crackled to life once more, this time carrying the unmistakable timbre of Meridian Charter's Operations Center. Emma Carlson sat perfectly still in Smart Seat 1A, fingers lightly interlaced in her lap. Her eyes were fixed on the slender linen curtain that divided the forward cabin from the galley. Behind that curtain, the gears of authority were turning. Halfway around the world, at Meridian's gleaming headquarters, COO Michelle Grant stared at a bank of monitors in her situation room. One screen displayed the live feed from the Smart Seat camera in 1A, Emma's composed profile, the polished leather of her seat, and, ever so briefly, the gloved hand of Vanessa Ricci as it had struck Emma's arm. Another monitor showed a digital dashboard pulsing in red. Emergency alert. Michelle's gloved fingertip traced the screen as alarms blinked. A foot-tall plaque read, "Hold Protocol Class A, the company's highest priority lockdown procedure, reserved only for threats to passenger safety or corporate integrity." There was no hesitation. She tapped a sequence of commands, her movements decisive. "Initiate cabin lockdown," she spoke into her headset. "Captain Reynolds, this is Michelle at Operations. You are to lock the cockpit door, hold all boarding, and do not proceed until you receive a clearance code. A passenger has been assaulted." Back in the cabin, the mood lights simmered from cobalt back to a muted amber as Emma felt yet another gentle vibration beneath her seat. The Smart Seat's silent acknowledgement that her alert had been received. Her heart fluttered, not with fear, but with a steady rush of validation. The older gentleman across the aisle stiffened, looking toward the cockpit curtain as if expecting someone to burst through with answers. From behind the galley curtain, Captain Reynolds' voice sounded clipped and professional. "Flight MC-1109, this is the cockpit. We have received an operations directive. Cabin lockdown in effect. Do not close the flight deck door. All crew to hold position until further notice." There was no edge of panic in his tone, only the measured cadence of a man accustomed to following orders. Emma inhaled slowly, steeling herself. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with a confirmation text from her mother. "Flight held. Stand by for further instructions." Her pulse steadied further. She'd drawn her hand from her tote and brushed the smooth Smart Seat plaque, feeling the subtle warmth of the sensor. Technology and family power had converged on her behalf. From the galley, Vanessa Ricci emerged, her posture rigid. She paused at the curtain, blinking as if trying to clear her thoughts. Her clipboard, once clasped so firmly, now dangled at her side. Emma watched as Vanessa exchanged a quick, anxious glance with Avery Brooks, the junior flight attendant. Avery's eyes met Emma's for a moment, a flash of solidarity. Emma nodded imperceptibly. It was enough. Captain Reynolds opened the small service door between cockpit and cabin, then closed it behind him, leaving only the faint click of the latch. Every ambient noise seemed amplified in the sudden silence. The soft whoosh of air vents, the pleat of linen curtains, even the quiet scrape of a passenger shifting in his seat. Michelle Grant's voice crackled once more through the speakers. "All right, team," she said, though only the crew could hear. "We've confirmed the incident. Proceed with disciplinary protocol. Vanessa Ricci is to be relieved of duty immediately. Have her make a public apology to Miss Carlson and return her to seat 1A. Afterwards, escort her to the rear of the plane and await removal by ground staff." There was a flicker of motion as Vanessa stepped forward. In the background, Emma could hear the faint click of high-heeled shoes on the cabin floor. Goosebumps rose on her arms, not from cold, but from the weight of what was happening. A flight attendant's injury or a medical emergency might also trigger a lockdown, but this was different. This was corporate justice delivered in real time, mid-air. Across the aisle, the older gentleman snapped a photo of the intercom announcement with his tablet. Emma thought of the threads this video clip would create online, the instant news alerts and social media discussions. The hush in the cabin felt less like compliance and more like focused attention. Passengers who had been silent witnesses now forced to reckon with their own inaction. Vanessa reached the curtain's edge and paused. She took a slow, steadying breath, then stepped out into the aisle. Emma's breath caught in her throat as Vanessa's eyes locked onto hers. No hate, no anger, just a flicker of regret. And something else Emma couldn't quite name, perhaps embarrassment or fear. Vanessa cleared her throat, her voice soft but clear. "Miss Carlson, She hesitated, swallowed, then found the words. "I apologize for my actions. I was wrong to question your presence and to touch you. Please allow me to escort you back to seat 1A. The cabin remained motionless. The man across the aisle lowered his tablet and inclined his head. A young couple in the next row exchanged glances. Their phones had quietly started recording. Emma let a single nod suffice. She rose, smoothing the front of her skirt. As she passed Vanessa, she felt the soft brush of the flight attendant's sleeve, an almost human connection in a moment of corporate procedure. Once Emma was seated again, the cabin lights shifted back to the familiar amber. Vanessa stepped back, hand over her heart, as though the formal apology had cost her more than she'd anticipated. Emma's gaze softened for only an instant. There was no triumph in her eyes, only a quiet acknowledgement that this was justice. In the cockpit, Captain Reynolds's voice announced, "Cabin lockdown lifted. We are cleared to close the doors and proceed to runway." The engines hummed to life again, vibrating throughout the floor and seat. Emma tapped her fingertips on the smart seat plaque, feeling the residual warmth of the sensor. She settled back into her seat just as the plane began to taxi. The older gentleman offered her a polite nod, and Avery Brooks came around with a bottle of water. Emma accepted it with a nod of thanks, lifting the cup to her lips in a gesture of restored normalcy. As the runway light streaked past the window, Emma let herself exhale fully for the first time in, she realized, nearly an hour. She thought of the technology beneath her, the decisive action from her parents, and the accountability woven into the corporate fabric. In the quiet aftermath of the lockdown, Emma Carlson felt a deep sense of affirmation that sometimes standing still and letting power operate through silent systems was the strongest move of all. And as Flight MC-109 ascended into the night sky toward Paris, the story of this charter and of a 14-year-old girl in Smart Seat 1A took on a life beyond protocol. It became a lesson in dignity, in watching and being watched, and in the extraordinary ways that silent authority can right a wrong. The entire cabin seemed to hold its breath as a hush fell over Meridian Charter Flight MC-109. Emma Carlson sat perfectly still in Smart Seat 1A, her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the small high-definition screen that had descended from the ceiling above the aisle. Moments ago, the speakers had crackled with the announcement of the cabin lockdown. But now, something more extraordinary was about to happen. The screen flickered to life, displaying the crisp, professional visage of COO Michelle Grant. Her tailored charcoal blazer and the sleek Meridian Charter logo projected behind her gave the impression of a corporate war room rather than an airplane cabin. Emma's pulse quickened. She'd never been on the receiving end of a live corporate video call, especially not at 14 and never mid-flight. "Good evening, everyone," Michelle's voice rang out, calm but authoritative. "I'm here to address an incident involving one of our passengers, specifically the treatment of Miss Emma Carlson by one of our flight attendants." The cabin lights dimmed subtly as cabin attendants dimmed personal reading lamps, directing every eye toward the screen. Emma caught her breath. Vanessa Ricci stood near the galley curtain, arms folded, staring at the screen with a mixture of dread and defiance. Behind Vanessa, Avery Brooks hovered, her face a mask of concern. The rest of the passengers leaned forward in their seats, as if drawn by an invisible thread of anticipation. Michelle's eyes scanned the cabin via the high-resolution feed, then returned to the camera. "Miss Ricci," she said, nodding slightly, "you have been accused of striking a minor passenger, denying her rightful seat, and violating Meridian's code of conduct. Under Meridian's Class A emergency protocol, the same protocol that grounds this flight, the authority to resolve this incident has been elevated to me directly. Miss Ricci, please step forward and address your actions. A low murmur rippled through the cabin. Emma felt a flush of heat in her cheeks, but held her posture steady. She glanced at Vanessa, who hesitated a heartbeat too long before pressing her gloved fingertips together and stepping into the aisle. The overhead mood lighting shifted to a neutral white, spotlighting Vanessa in a subtly charged stage effect. Miss Ricci, Michelle continued, you are on camera and surrounded by witnesses. You will make a public apology to Miss Carlson, return her to Smart Seat 1A, and acknowledge your wrongdoing. Do you understand? Vanessa's voice trembled ever so slightly. I understand, ma'am. She swallowed hard, her professional composure cracking at the edges. Emma, she began, her tone softening. I'm sorry. I was wrong to question your presence. I let my assumptions guide me, and I acted inappropriately. I apologize for striking your hand and for causing you distress. Her voice caught. For a moment, the cabin was completely silent. No rustle of papers, no coughs, just the gentle hum of the video link and the faint drone of the engines. The screen split, showing Michelle's approving nod and Emma's calm, steady gaze. Emma felt the weight of every eye shift to her. She took a slow breath and stood. The small video screen now framed her too, her school uniform skirt pressed neatly, her hair pulled back in a single braid. She straightened the strap of her tote and met Michelle's gaze on the screen. Thank you, Emma said, her voice quiet but resonant. That means a lot. She paused, searching Vanessa's eyes before continuing. I'd like everyone to know that I have a valid ticket, and that people deserve the benefit of the doubt before they're judged. Michelle's voice emerged again, warm but firm. Thank you, Miss Carlson. Miss Ricci, please escort Miss Carlson back to seat 1A. The screen went dark. The cabin lights brightened to their usual glow, and the video system retracted into the ceiling with a soft whir. Vanessa turned and offered Emma an outstretched arm. Emma accepted it without hesitation, smoothing her skirt as she walked past. The silver plaque of Smart Seat 1A gleamed at eye level as Emma slipped back into her seat. Vanessa stood beside her for an instant, her expression contrite, and then she retreated toward the galley, her shoulders slightly hunched. Emma settled, heart pounding but filling with a fierce pride. She caught the eye of a middle-aged gentleman across the aisle. He offered a subtle nod of respect. Emma returned it, lifting her chin. Avery Brooks appeared moments later with a fresh glass of water. Emma accepted it, letting the cool sensation calm her. The cabin's atmosphere had shifted. What had begun as whispered tension and polite avoidance had transformed into a quiet declaration. Prejudice would be met with accountability, even at 30,000 feet. Emma realized how unusual it was. Rarely did corporate power manifest so directly in public view. Yet here it was, delivered not with bombast, but with structured, undeniable authority. A faint beep prompted Emma to glance at her phone. COO Grant will see a formal incident report on her desk within the hour. She slipped the phone back into her tote, a small, triumphant smile curving her lips. She thought of her mother, of how swiftly she had relayed Emma's alert and how decisively her father had backed her. The family's influence wasn't an empty promise. It was an active safeguard backed by cutting-edge technology. From the galley, Emma heard Captain Reynolds' voice calmly notify the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, we are cleared to close the flight deck door and proceed. We apologize for any inconvenience and thank you for your patience. The engine's hum grew a little stronger as the plane taxied toward the runway. Emma leaned back in her seat, letting herself exhale. The smart seat's massage function pulsed softly against her back, like a quiet pat of reassurance. She opened her poetry book once more, but this time her gaze drifted to the oval window. Outside, the city lights of New York glowed like scattered embers against the dark canvas of the night sky. For a moment, Emma closed her eyes, recalling each step of this confrontation. The initial sting of injustice, the quiet resolve to act, the surge of vindication as the screen came alive with Michelle Grant's face. She realized that power didn't always roar. It sometimes spoke through screens and sensors, through formal procedures and unwavering calm. The real crescendo wasn't the slap itself, but the live, unignorable rebuke that followed. When the sun rose over the clouds on the approach into Paris, Emma Carlson would carry this moment with her, not as a tale of victimhood, but as a proof point of dignity enforced by equality. As the runway lights came into view, she tucked her poetry book into her bag, pressed her hand once more against the Smart Seat plaque, and looked forward to the journey ahead. Because sometimes, the most profound victories are won not with shouts, but with silent, unyielding power. Vanessa Ricci stood just beyond the galley curtain, her hands pressed into the pockets of her pencil skirt as though clinging to a lifeline. The formal apology she'd just issued remained suspended in the cabin air, a stark contrast to the confident composure she'd once worn like a uniform. Now those crisp lines felt too tight, as if her very identity had been sewn into a garment that no longer fit. Through the curtain's sheer linen, Emma Carlson watched Vanessa's shoulders tremble. Avery Brooks hovered at Vanessa's elbow, offering a silent look of support that Emma recognized from earlier. Avery had never truly agreed with Vanessa's actions. Now, Avery's presence seemed to steady Vanessa like a hand on her back, gently guiding her through a collapse of the world she thought she controlled. Vanessa took a shuddering breath and drew a trembling hand across her collarbone. She glanced at the rows of leather seats, empty now of onlookers, before her gaze came to rest on Emma, seated largely at ease in Smart Seat 1A. Emma met her eyes, not with triumph, but with a calm curiosity, as if studying a wounded animal more than an adversary. There was no gloating there, just a steady acknowledgement that vulnerability had shifted power in a way neither of them could have anticipated. "Miss Carlson," Vanessa murmured, voice cracking on the edge of a whisper as she stepped forward into the aisle. Emma's heart fluttered, not with alarm, but with compassion. She straightened slightly, inviting Vanessa's approach. Vanessa closed the gap between them and lowered her voice even further. I've never been called out like that." She shook her head, eyes glistening. "Not by a passenger, especially not by someone so young." Her words trembled, but there was an honesty there that Emma had never expected. "I don't want to see you suffer," Emma said softly, "but I needed you to know what it feels like." The cabin lights cast gentle shadows on Vanessa's face, highlighting the sheen of tears and lines of regret. Emma's tone was steady. No lecture, no self-righteousness, just human understanding. Vanessa swallowed, looking away to brush a tear from her cheek. "I let my biases take over," she admitted. "I fooled myself into thinking I was upholding standards. But all I did was humiliate someone who had every right to be here." She paused, gaze fixed on the plush carpet at her feet. "I don't deserve to be in this uniform." Avery stepped close and placed a tentative hand on Vanessa's arm. "You're still an important part of this crew," Avery said gently. "You've helped so many people in emergencies. Everyone makes mistakes." Emma watched the exchange, feeling a deep sense of connection between the two women, one seeking forgiveness, the other offering it. Vanessa's shoulders slumped further. "But this was different. This was personal judgment." She closed her eyes and took a long, shuddering breath. "I treated you like you were less than, and then I struck you. I can't undo that." Emma nodded once. "You can't undo it, but you can move forward." Emma glanced toward the cockpit curtain, imagining Captain Reynolds preparing for takeoff and the COO's office finalizing the incident report. "People will remember this cabin for what happened. They'll remember how you made it right." Vanessa looked up, incredulous. You're actually trying to help me? After everything?" Her voice cracked, vulnerability laid bare. It was a moment of raw humanity, far removed from the polished veneer of corporate procedure that had unfolded just minutes before. Emma offered a small, empathetic smile. "I'm 14. I've learned that everyone carries unseen baggage. You showed yours." Now you have a choice. Let it ruin you, or learn from it. Vanessa blinked back more tears. I want to learn. She brushed a hand across her cheek and squared her shoulders. I need to go through retraining, diversity workshops, whatever it takes. Her voice gained strength as she spoke, conviction replacing shame. I want to be better. Avery nodded approvingly, and a faint warmth passed through Vanessa's expression. The cabin, once a stage for confrontation, now felt like a classroom, a place for lessons in empathy and growth. Emma rose to her feet and extended her hand. Vanessa hesitated, then accepted it, her grip tentative but sincere. The sound of their handshake echoed in the quiet cabin, a symbol of reconciliation. A commotion at the front of the plane signaled the crew members moving to their stations for departure. Emma stepped back into 1A, smoothing her skirt. Vanessa lingered, eyes flicking from Emma to Avery, then down to the plush aisle carpet. A woman caught between two worlds, one defined by rigid procedure, the other by human connection. As Emma settled back into her seat, Vanessa said, her voice soft but steady, "Thank you, Miss Carlson." It wasn't a forced apology, but a genuine gratitude for being seen. Emma acknowledged her presence with a graceful nod. Vanessa took a step toward the galley, but before she passed through the curtain, she paused. Turning, she looked at Emma once more. No apology this time, just recognition. Then the curtain fell, and Vanessa left the cabin scene behind. Avery Brooks moved in to replace Vanessa in the aisle, her demeanor calm and professional. She clicked her heels to attention and began securing the cabin for departure. Emma watched her work, admiring Avery's quiet competence, another example of grace under pressure. The older gentleman across the aisle offered Emma an affirming nod and turned back to his tablet. Emma smiled softly, feeling a sense of closure. What had begun as a moment of injustice had transformed into something richer, a connection born of accountability and kindness. Outside, through the oval window, the moon cast a silver path across the clouds. Emma leaned back, letting the soft hum of the engines cradle her. She touched the smart seat plaque once more, feeling the subtle warmth of the sensor beneath her fingers. The technology had triggered the protocol, but it was human understanding that had completed the circle. In her lap, her poetry book lay closed, a reminder of stillness amid turbulence. She opened it to the haiku her father had given her, fingertip hovering over the lines. Silent river flows, stones smoothed by gentle currents, strength in softest breath. Emma read them again, tasting each word. She realized that the greatest strength often lay in gentleness, in the power to acknowledge pain, to seek understanding, and to heal. As Flight MC-109 glided toward cruising altitude, Emma Carlson allowed herself a quiet sigh of contentment. The cabin lights shifted back to their usual soft glow, and the engine's hum became a steady lullaby. She closed her eyes for a moment, savoring the tranquility. Then, opening them again, she gazed at the aisle, empty now of confrontation but charged with something more enduring. The promise that empathy, once sparked, could illuminate even the highest skies. The cabin returned to its familiar ambient glow as the final preparations for departure resumed. But something fundamental had shifted. A soft chime on the intercom interrupted Avery Brooks as she straightened the last curtain. Captain Reynolds' measured voice announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Effective immediately, Flight Attendant Vanessa Ricci has been temporarily relieved of duty pending a full investigation by Meridian Charter Corporate. She will be escorted to the rear of the aircraft and deplaned upon landing. We appreciate your patience and understanding." A ripple of subdued relief passed through the cabin. Emma Carlson, seated in Smart Seat 1A, allowed herself a slow exhale. She pressed her fingertips against the polished brass plaque, feeling its reassuring warmth. The crisis protocol had done its work. Moments later, the cabin door opened quietly behind the curtain. Two uniformed staff members, one from Human Resources, the other a ground security officer, stepped in to retrieve Vanessa's badge, scarf, and wings. Vanessa approached them, her head bowed, her uniform immaculate, yet somehow lifeless. She handed over her credentials without a word, each pin and ribbon slipping from her lapel like a concession. Emma watched from her seat as Vanessa's posture straightened for a final nod to Captain Reynolds, then a brief glance toward Emma before she followed the escort to the rear galley. Avery lingered in the aisle for a heartbeat, catching Emma's eye. She offered a small, sympathetic smile and then slipped back to her own station. No one cheered. There was no applause. This was not a spectacle, but a clear demonstration of accountability on the spot, a hallmark of Meridian's zero-tolerance policy. For Emma Carlson, that was exactly as it should be. Avery reappeared beside seat 1A with a fresh bottle of Evian water. She uncapped it and handed the glass to Emma. "Miss Carlson, may I get you anything else? A light snack, perhaps?" Her tone was warm and unhurried. Emma smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Avery. Some of those smoked salmon canapes would be lovely." Avery nodded and glided away. Emma watched her go, feeling both relief and an unexpected pang of sympathy. Vanessa's career, 15 years of service, awards for in-flight safety, had been halted mid-air. It was a heavy price, albeit a fitting consequence for publicly humiliating a child with a valid ticket. Emma thought of the thousands of passengers Vanessa had assisted without incident, and a twinge of remorse crept in. Across the aisle, the older gentleman offered Emma a discreet nod of solidarity. He held up his water glass and gently tapped it against his tablet. Emma lifted her glass in return, a silent toast to fairness rather than vengeance. The cabin crew, under Avery's guidance, began their final service. Soft strains of piano jazz drifted from hidden speakers as trays of smoked salmon, mini quiches, and gourmet macarons appeared. Passengers who had once averted their gaze now shared small smiles with Emma as Avery placed a canapé on her fold-down table. Emma took a delicate bite, savoring the smoky saltiness, and let her eyes drift out the window. The runway lights starred the black canvas of night, but Emma's mind was already hundreds of miles ahead, planning the next leg of her trip, considering which of her favorite haiku she'd read next. Yet beneath the calm, she felt a quiet undercurrent of thought. Power carried cost. Vanessa's public apology and removal would become part of Meridian's internal record, likely circulated among staff as a cautionary tale. Emma didn't relish Vanessa's disgrace, but she recognized that meaningful change often demanded a heavy price. Avery returned with a plate of truffle-infused mushroom quiche. "Here you go," she said, placing it gently on Emma's table. "I've made a note to keep this station for you, in case you'd like more." Emma nodded in thanks. "That's very kind." She paused, watching Avery's careful attention to small details. The way she smoothed the napkin on Emma's lap, the angle of the reading lamp over her tray table. "You've been wonderful tonight." Avery's cheeks colored slightly. "It's my pleasure. We're here to make sure you're comfortable." She straightened, then looked toward the rear of the cabin through the curtain. Emma saw her eyes soften. "I hope," Avery hesitated. "I hope everything turns out well." Emma offered her a reassuring smile. "It already has." As Avery moved on, Emma reflected on how this charter had unfolded. It began with an inciting moment of injustice, Vanessa's challenge and slap, followed by the silent, powerful machinery of smart seat technology and corporate protocol. The public apology, the temporary suspension, the formal announcement, all had been executed with procedural precision. Passengers sipped their drinks and sampled canapés, the previous tension now a shared memory rather than an ongoing drama. An older woman in a silk scarf leaned over the aisle to whisper, "Thank you for making us all see what can happen when we stay silent." Emma nodded, moved by the unspoken solidarity among strangers. She took another bite of quiche, feeling the warm custard give way under her teeth. As she chewed thoughtfully, she allowed herself gratitude for the technology that protected her, for her family's swift support, and for the crew members like Avery who remained devoted to genuine service. Mid-flight, the cabin lights dimmed to their restful night mode. Emma stowed her poetry book on the side pocket of her seat and stretched her legs. She settled in, ready to read Alex Haley's Roots or perhaps pen a few haiku of her own. Yet she couldn't shake the image of Vanessa's bowing form disappearing behind the curtain, a stark reminder that human errors have human consequences. But some consequences could lead to growth. Emma hoped Vanessa would use this moment to learn, to expand her empathy and understanding. After all, resilience was born from accountability. And for Emma Carlson, silent witness turned catalyst. The journey had brought both justice and a deeper compassion for the flawed human beings who make up every story. As the engines hummed and the night deepened, Emma closed her eyes briefly, feeling a sense of closure and anticipation. This flight was more than a passage from New York to Paris. It had become a testament to dignity enforced by both silent technology and human process, a story worthy of the karma telltales she so admired. And with that thought, she drifted into the restful hush of cruise, ready for whatever the next chapter would bring. Emma Carlson settled back into her smart seat, its familiar hum a quiet reminder of the power resting beneath her. She glanced at the small touchscreen embedded in the armrest, remembering how it had recorded every nuance of tonight's confrontation. Now, she tapped the seat info icon and watched as a succinct overview slid into view. Smart Seat R&D funded by Meridian Charter's Innovation Fund, $300 million initial investment. 80% of R&D shares held by Chairman Harrison Carlson. Her heart fluttered. A $300 million commitment to safety and accountability wasn't just corporate lip service. It was her family's legacy in action. This wasn't some off-the-shelf gadget. It was a bespoke system her father had championed, one designed to protect every passenger, from VIP charter clients to everyday travelers. She leaned forward, tracing the data points listed below the funding summary. Sensors calibrated to detect sudden impacts, microphones attuned to elevated decibels, secure video feed transmitted directly to the operations center. All of it had kicked into gear the moment Vanessa Ricci's hand swung toward her arm. Emma let out a soft breath. It wasn't just the technology that had set this story in motion. It was the alignment of human intention and engineered precision. Without the Smart Seat's alert, her mother's text, and her father's authority, there would have been no immediate consequences. The incident might have been another hushed whisper among first-class scandals, buried beneath corporate PR spin. Instead, it became a mid-air reckoning. Avery Brooks appeared at her side with a final tray of Petite Fours, and Emma smiled. "Thank you, Avery. This is wonderful." As Avery departed, Emma reflected on the responsibilities tied to such power. She wasn't simply a passenger. She had become the focal point of a system engineered to uphold dignity. And now that she understood the scope of her family's investment, she felt a deeper weight on her shoulders. She opened her poetry book and found the haiku she'd written earlier that evening. Silent censor wakes. A child's soft breath calls for aid, justice through still grace. She read the lines aloud, each syllable a reminder that technology was only as moral as the humans guiding it. Emma tapped the screen again, this time opening a brief note field. She typed, "To Dad, thank you for creating a world where dignity is protected, even when I'm silent. Love, Emma." She paused before hitting send, aware that her words would land in her father's inbox soon. A personal reflection on his corporate vision. Outside, clouds drifted by under the plane's wing, illuminated by faint moonlight. Emma allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. Her journey, at once personal and emblematic, had demonstrated how innovation could enforce compassion. The Smart Seat was more than a marvel of engineering. It was an extension of her family's belief in doing what's right, even when no one is watching. As the cabin dimmed for the overnight cruise, Emma closed her book and rested her hand on the brass Smart Seat plaque. She felt the solidity of the seat beneath her, the unspoken promise it embodied. And in that moment, she understood her own role: to honor that promise, to speak her truth, and to ensure that silent power always served justice. News of Flight MC-109's mid-air lockdown rippled across social media within minutes of landing. Hashtags like #SilentPowerMove and #Seat1A trended as passengers and armchair critics picked apart every detail. Emma Carlson sat in her father's town car, the city lights of Paris flickering past the window, scrolling through real-time updates. A screenshot of Meridian's official statement glowed on her phone screen. Meridian Charter remains committed to zero tolerance for discrimination. Effective immediately, all flight attendants will undergo enhanced bias awareness and customer respect training. Smart seat emergency protocols will be expanded fleet-wide. Emma felt a quiet swell of pride. This wasn't a token gesture. It was a structural shift, an honest admission that the system could fail without the right safeguards. Her father's $300 million R&D fund wasn't simply about innovation. It was a catalyst for real cultural reform. She tapped a news link, an op-ed praising Meridian's swift action, calling it a watershed moment in aviation accountability. Another article shared interviews with passengers who said the cabin lockdown forced them to confront their own silence. One reader wrote, "That 14-year-old girl showed us that dignity doesn't require volume. It demands vigilance." That struck Emma. Vigilance wasn't just a slogan. It was a personal mantra. She had learned that staying silent didn't mean surrender. It meant choosing the right moment and method to demand justice. And for Meridian, vigilance meant rolling out smart seat emergency protocols across every charter and commercial route by year's end. Her father's email landed next. "So proud of you. We'll be discussing next phase training modules when I'm back. Rest well. This is just the beginning. Love, Dad." Emma smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility shift into something energizing. Policy changes would ripple through training academies, reshaping how flight crews treated every passenger. Diverse workshops, role-playing simulations, and tech briefings would become standard. It was a long haul, but Meridian's commitment was clear. Across the cabin of the town car, Emma leaned back and closed her eyes. She envisioned other travelers, lone teens, unaccompanied adults, anyone who'd ever been judged by appearance rather than ticket. She thought of them sitting in smart seats, knowing they had an advocate beneath their seat that never slept. Her mother's text followed. "The board approved your suggestion for a passenger-led review committee. We'll have volunteers submit feedback next month." A passenger-led review committee, Emma's idea from earlier in the flight, meant passengers could directly report concerns, ensuring lived experiences shaped policy. It wasn't a passive gesture. It was community-driven change. As the car eased to a stop outside her hotel, Emma caught her reflection in the tinted glass. Eyes bright, posture poised. She had gone from silent witness to active agent of change. The world had watched her seat, but now it would listen to her voice. She stepped out into the Parisian night, suitcase in hand, feeling both grounded and limitless. The flight cabin's hush had turned into a chorus of accountability, and as the city lights glimmered around her, Emma Carlson walked forward, knowing that true power, once silent, could transform entire systems. Emma Carlson gazed out the floor-to-ceiling window of her Paris hotel suite, the city's golden lights reflecting like dappled stars on the Seine. Behind her, the half-packed suitcase rested against the wall, memory of the journey she'd completed, both physical and moral. She closed her eyes, letting the gentle hum of the air conditioner lull her into reflection. She thought back to Flight MC-109, the hush before confrontation, the subtle power of the smart seat alert, the live video call that brought corporate authority into the cabin, and Vanessa Ricci's apology that rippled through the rows. She recalled the warm solidarity of strangers, the unexpected kindness from Avery Brooks and the older gentleman across the aisle, and how the cabin, once tense and divided, had become a community of witnesses awakened to their own responsibility. A soft chime from her phone interrupted her thoughts. A group chat thread with fellow passengers glowed on screen. Messages of gratitude, reflections on silence as complicity, and plans for a passenger-led review committee. Emma smiled at their resolve. They too had been transformed by a single mid-air moment. She opened her poetry notebook and let her pen glide across the pages. Wings cleave silent sky. Passengers awaken slow. Dignity reborn. Her hand paused. The haiku felt fitting, a quiet affirmation of the shift from indifference to awareness. Emma rose and walked to the balcony. The night air drifted in cool and fragrant. Below, Parisians strolled along the riverbank, their laughter floating upward. Here, in this timeless city of art and revolution, Emma recognized a parallel. Every social movement began with a small, steadfast act. One person speaking truth to power. She whispered to herself, "It started with silence, but it didn't end there." She envisioned the new bias awareness training modules Meridian would deploy, the expanded smart seat protocols, and the passenger review committee that would institutionalize vigilance. These were bricks in a larger structure, a culture built on proactive kindness and unwavering accountability. Her mind drifted to her father's message. This is just the beginning. Indeed, it was. Beyond corporate ceilings and cabin corridors, the real test would be everyday flights, train rides, and city streets. Places where unnoticed slights could fester. But Emma felt ready, armed with the understanding that technology and policy were powerful, but empathy and personal courage were even stronger. She returned to her desk, opened a fresh email to Meridian's leadership. "Tonight, I stood witness to change on flight MC-109. Let us carry that momentum forward into every cabin, every crew briefing, every passenger's heart." She read it over and clicked send. With that, Emma Carlson closed her notebook and returned to the window. The Eiffel Tower's twinkling beacon swept slowly across the night sky, a silent testament to human aspiration. Emma lifted her chin, the soft night breeze at her back, and allowed herself one last moment of thoughtful calm. She understood now that true travel wasn't just about moving through space, but about journeying through understanding, growth, and shared humanity. And with that realization warm in her chest, Emma turned from the window, ready to step into the dawn of whatever came next.